Yes, we know how it's spelled. Trust me, we know how to spell altar. But we're talking here about how we take what we experience when we gather around the altar of the church, how we take that experience of the gospel and alter it to be applicable to our time. So we like the title, The Altar Project, primarily because hopefully it will make some people go, huh, you know it's spelled that way? And we can go, yes, we are. Let us tell you why. What is the Altar Project all about, really? That's a great question. And again, a question I hope that we are asked time and time again. The Altar Project is simply the way in which we as a parish, we as individuals, we as a community seek to live out the baptismal covenant, our identity, our promise to God for what we will seek to do as followers of Christ in the world, that we enter into at baptism and remind ourselves of every time that we renew that baptism, that baptismal covenant we have. Remember some of those questions. Will you continue in the apostles' teaching and fellowship, in the breaking of bread and in the prayers? How do we as the community of St. Andrews do that? How do we share the faith? How do we gather in fellowship? How do we break bread one with another? How do we continue in prayers? How does our worship ground who we are and then send us out into the world to continue to do what the church has been doing all along? Questions like, will you proclaim by word and example the good news of God in Christ? How do you as an individual, how do we as the community of St. Andrews again go out in the world and do just that through our word and example, proclaim the good news of God in Christ? How do we use the gifts we have, the gifts of our individual gifts of people, our gifts of space? How do we use those gifts to proclaim the gospel in the world? That's a question that we will answer in the Altar Project. Not a question that we already have answered, but a question that we will seek to answer and live out. What's the end date? What's the goal that we're headed for as far as time? Well, to put it theologically, in the fullness of time. There is no end date. There is no, we are going to have this set in motion by spring of 2022 or Advent of 2023. Because what we are embarking on is altering our understanding and our engagement with the gospel that we have promised that we will proclaim throughout our entire life, throughout our individual life, and throughout the entire life of this parish community, now and unto the ages of ages, as St. Paul would write and would say. So that's the time. We have certain markers that we aim for to have this sort of conversation within, this period of time, but this is really entering into a new way of being, a new way of living. That is not just, as I often say, a checkbox that we check off and say, we move on from there. No, the Altar Project is limitless, just as the mercy and grace and love of God is limitless through Christ. The Altar Project invites us to say, how do we proclaim this gospel today? How will we proclaim it tomorrow? And let's get ready to proclaim it in the future. And during that journey into our future, to keep revisiting, realigning, altering the way we proclaim the unshakable truths of the gospel in relevant ways in our time. There is no end date.